This is the last warrior, Greywolf, and you are listening to the Electric City Wrestling Fans Podcast. On the roof, yeah!
Get the F out.
Alright, welcome to episode number 21 of the ECWF podcast. We will not get the F out, we put the F back in. I am your host, Sean Bicking, coming to you live from the Electric City, Scranton, Pennsylvania. On this episode, my guest was the last warrior, Greywolf. We talk everything from Viking culture, injuries in wrestling, the Ricochet Ospreay match that has the wrestling world talking. We talk weightlifting, his war paint, the world famous Monster Factory where he trained, his tag team, the Bloodbound Warriors, with Red Scorpion, his tag team partner. We talk working in ROH versus the Briscoes, meeting Bill Apter, and much, much more. Enjoy this episode.
Magistrales,
All right, back on our podcast here, live with the last warrior, Greywolf. And how are you tonight, sir?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
Very good, very good. Okay, I want to jump right into it. The last warrior, where does that nickname come from?
The last warrior, well, it's sort of a, moniker that I attribute to my lifestyle, what I applied to everything, sort of being the last of a dying breed, in this world. If you look at any of my pictures and see sort of what I'm all about, it's disciplined lifestyle and just applying the warrior spirit to everything you do in life, especially in the ring. I just sort of use that berserker rage and sanity when I am combating opponents.
Absolutely, yeah. I gotta say, I love your look, the whole gimmick, everything. Like, I think it looks great. It's very unique, like not something you see every day.
Thank you very much. I much appreciate that.
Yes. Okay, now I noticed a couple of your different pictures, 2 different color eyes. Is that a contact or is that, like, legit?
Here's what people often ask me that question, and here's what I like to tell them. I like to tell them they can believe what they want and they believe what they will. And the white eye is the eye that sees into the souls of all mankind. It's the eye that sees no evil, the eye that sees the truth, the eye that's not blinded by the corruption of the world, the eye that is all-encompassing and knows and sees all and see into the souls of men. That is what the white eye is, and take it for what it is. But that's how I tended to elaborate on that.
Okay. I like it. Sounds good. Okay, so let's take it back for a minute. Get into wrestling and stuff like that. Were you a big fan growing up?
But, I was always sort of drawn to all the glorious tales, any sort of martial combat throughout the ages. It had the biggest heroes and villains on the grandest stages of them all, going back to, all the old tales, Nordic tales, Aegil, the great warrior, of Achilles in ancient and Greek mythology, and Heracles, those sort of people, always very drawn to those sort of stories, and you had, medieval knightly combat when you had, warriors in full armor, combating each other, pounding swords and axes against shields, steel met steel, and you heard the clang and the ding, among the battle, on the battlefield. And then you go to, the Roman gladiatorial arena, which, if you think about it, isn't too different from what we do. You had this grand spectacle in which all would gather to see the stoutest and hardest of warriors compete for the grandest stage. Back then it was very well often a life and death battle. But I really feel like that's the closest thing you have, to in modern times. What do we have that is similar to that spectacle?
Right.
The whole presentation. What do we have? We have professional wrestling. You have the biggest, fiercest, mightiest warriors, especially back in that day and age, the 80s and 90s, when everybody was gigantic, and you just want to see the 2 biggest, fiercest warriors of them all, collide in that ring. So really, it spans throughout the ages. So yes, I was a really big fan of sort of all that sort of combat, all those stories, and professional wrestling really being the most modern of them all, and the most prevalent in our society. And I was just drawn to it. I was attached, I was enamored.
Yeah.
With the whole idea and the grandiosity behind it.
So the whole kind of like Viking culture and kind of drew you in first, and then you kind of applied that, I could take this over here to wrestling.
Oh, yeah, sort of. I mean, it sort of encompasses the whole thing, you know.
Right.
Viking combat, if you see what I do, there's a lot of, Viking heritage that I try to bring forth, into the battles that I enter, and I try to bring that tradition, hence the last warrior, trying to pay homage to those that came before me, to my ancestors, and really do justice to them in the best way that I can.
Okay. Now, when you first got into wrestling, you trained at the Monster Factory.
Yes, sir.
And you want to talk a little bit about that? What was that like?
Yeah, I'd be delighted to. Yes, all throughout the 80s and 90s, going back years, you had Nature Boy Buddy Rogers, and you had Pretty Boy Larry Sharp, who, made one of the first professional wrestling schools in the country, which, happened to be the world-famous Monster Factory. Through, 70s, 80s, 90s, really established a great reputation for itself. So when it came time to, enter this field, I felt drawn to that particular place. Fortunately, it's close to where I'm currently residing. It's in New Jersey. Right now, it's in Paulsboro, New Jersey. At the time that I went to it, it was in Belmar, New Jersey. Then before that, in Clementon and Westville, they had different locations throughout New Jersey. But I was sort of drawn, to that name and the reputation that it had. Now, when I started there, the reputation has sort of started to wane a little bit. They hadn't been using as many people for mainstream WWE or WWF at the time. The WCW, they hadn't been using as many people out of there, whereas before they would, collect a gathering of people, bring them up, and they would do jobs for Vince McMahon and everything else and go on the road. And so Monster Factory students and wrestlers were often used by them. So right. I remember entering the Monster Factory was when I started there.
So what year are we talking about?
This is 2005.
Okay.
When I started, it was a dismal sort of warehouse, and I remember it had no air conditioning in the summer, and it had no heat in the winter, and it was, a 20 by 20 ring, and on the stiffest rings you could ever possibly imagine being in. And yes, when it rained, the roof was so bad that we had torrents of buckets of water we had to bring out and dump outside, big totes, big plastic totes. We had to, dump outside. Half the time the bathroom wouldn't work. And every week they're on a promotion. Now, before I want to disclaimer, the Monster Factory is no longer like this. It's just, when I started several years ago, and I'll get onto that in a moment. But every week we had a promotion that ran out of there. We had two separate locker rooms: heels in one locker room, baby faces in another locker room. And the heels, to make them even more upset, I think, just to add that little extra edge and make them even angrier for what they did in the ring, they didn't have any bathrooms either. So if you were a heel, you either had to hold it or you had to go in a bottle. So you really didn't have many options.
Yeah.
But that's sort of that's what it was. And different trainer and ownership has since changed. 2011, Danny Cage took over ownership of the Monster Factory, and right now it's the second to none outside of perhaps the WWE Performance Center. And what he's done is just turn the place around. He's made it one of the best training facilities, I'd say, in the world. Now we have, full amateur mats throughout the entire building. We have 3 different rings. We have a weight room, shower facilities, anything you could possibly want. All sorts of audio, video equipment. Sort of the best of the best is what he's trying to bring into the facility right now, and always having different seminars with different people come in. We've had Les Thatcher, Rip Rogers, Bob Evans, just to name a few, and it's very often having the seminars for the students, and the place is just absolutely fantastic, with what he's done with it, and I'm very, very proud to be a part of that heritage and be a part of what's going on there right now.
Yeah, definitely. Do you want to, so it's been open since, you said, like, early 80s?
I believe so. I can't off the top of my head remember the exact year, but I remember it was well over 30 years.
Okay, and you want to,
been open now.
Do you want to throw out some of the names that came out of the Monster Factory?
I'd have to bring up a list. Most currently, Sheamus and Big Show, who are currently on the roster, came out of here. But people like Bam Bam Bigelow, Tatanka, The Godfather, King Kong Bundy, the Headbangers, Cliff Compton, just to name a few. The list goes on and on. I really just have to have a list in front of me of all the names. Currently, we have done in NXT, Steve Cutler, who was a student of ours, got picked up about almost 2 years ago now by NXT, and has been doing very, very well for himself down there.
Right.
So
that's awesome. Yeah, and you said yourself you're a trainer there now too, right?
I wouldn't go so far as a car myself a trainer. I'm a part-time coach. The head trainer is Danny Cage, and our other trainers are the Blue Meanie, Bill Wiles, Luis Punisher Martinez, and QT Marshall, who are the full-time trainers. And myself, I'm there sort of as a part-time coach. The rest being full-time coach. I'm there sort of a part-time coach. When I get down, usually I go down on Thursdays. So I'm there usually once a week to help with the newer students.
Now, is that something maybe after your wrestling career is done, you see yourself kind of doing that full-time?
I mean, you never know where it might take you. I love being around the business. I love contributing, and I love giving back. And one of my favorite, most gratifying things is, taking a student to absolutely nothing and seeing them grow, seeing them blossom into, professional wrestler, and really bringing out the best of them. So, and that in itself sort of is its own rewards. I mean, I can see myself doing that, down the road still, just because I love the business so much. I love being around it, and I love, giving back. And I just looked at some people who are my mentors that, I really look up to, and who sort of encouraged me to give what I know back to the business. And, Brutal Bob Evans, I look to as one of my mentors. Danny Cage, of course, very close to me, and I look up to him very much as well. But people like that who, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Cuba Carmichael, who runs down South Carolina. There's people like that who are just continually giving back to the business and just trying to do what they can to, make it better. And people like Pitbull Gary Wolf, who's taught me quite a bit. Jason Knight, who served as a bit of a mentor for me. Rock and Rebel, Tom Brandy, just sort of people like that who are always giving back to the business and trying to make the next generation better. And it's just nothing more gratifying for me than seeing people that I've trained apply what I've taught them and succeed in their own right.
Right, yeah. And you mentioned like giving back to the business. Like, how important is that for like the next generation?
I mean, if the veterans didn't give back to us, where would we be?
Right, exactly.
We wouldn't have a business. It's just sort of, engendering another generation to come. It's sort of like being an ancestor. You always try to pay tribute and homage to your ancestors. We are the ancestors within the business, and it is a crazy family. It's sort of an interconnected brotherhood, a fraternity almost, if you will. But, if you could be part of that and give to the next generation, I feel like the father of some of these people that are just coming up, or I like to say even better, the crazy uncle that people don't like to talk about most of the time.
Yeah.
But yes, if we weren't giving back, where would the next generation be?
Right, exactly. Okay, you mentioned being a fan, growing up a little bit. Did you play any other sports growing up?
Not really. I stuck mainly to combat sort of things. I always liked to wrestle people. I was always interested in, lifting heavy things. So I started weightlifting very, very early. So I really did that. I mean, who doesn't, go around with a group of friends and, play the baseball here or there, just casually. But nothing that really interested me. I wasn't really committed to anything sort of like that. To this day, sports really just doesn't do much for me. I was actually having a conversation quite earlier that how I don't understand sports, but the ones that involve the ball, at least. It's just something that escapes me. It's something I just don't understand and I just can't comprehend. I sort of equate it personally to watching a dog play fetch. If you're playing fetch with a dog, sometimes you can sort of entertain yourself. But for me, it's like watching someone play fetch with a dog. It's sort of I just don't understand how that could be.
I got
and it's
you.
just me personally. I know there are plenty of people who understand sports, and it's nothing against anyone. It's just the personal thing where for some reason, it escapes me and it eludes me that I can't really understand. And I appreciate. Don't get me wrong. I appreciate all the training and the hard work and all the effort because I know what it takes for every facet of what I do.
Yeah.
As far as being entertained by it, I just don't. I cannot understand it for the life of me.
Yeah. So, when you started out wrestling, you said 2005, right?
Yes, sir.
Well, was there ever any, you were wrestling under any different names?
It's one I cannot to mention, but yes, I was. I'm not going to actually mention.
Okay.
I'm not going to mention the name just because it was a bit of a rib by the promoter.
Okay.
So that's sort of a name I try to distance myself from, but it essentially was a little bit similar to what I'm doing now, and what I'm doing is sort of just an evolution of everything I've been doing since I started, which was my idea essentially to begin with.
I got you.
So I've been fortunate and privileged, to really express myself, and I really feel like because this isn't art, you're going to succeed at your best when you can personally express yourself to the best of your ability and express what you want to express. And we've seen that fairly recently, I believe, in WWE, where Cody Rhodes was forced into forced into the gimmick of the Stardust, and he really didn't want to do the Stardust. And you could almost see, it didn't shine through it. You could really tell it wasn't he. He almost didn't want to be it, but it was sort of forced. But he did what he had to do, and it's more genuine if it comes from you. It's so much more. It'll connect a lot better with the fans too, because it's something you really want to do, and it's coming from you, and it's part of who you are. And I feel like I was just been very privileged through my career to be able to express myself in that way. And so I really can say that in that facet, I'm very, very fortunate, because I am a very creative person. I have a lot to express.
Yeah.
And I don't like limitations and restrictions, being placed upon me. For me, that's very difficult to operate when I have, limitations and restrictions. And even if I do, I try to do what I can creatively within those limitations and restrictions. So I've just been very fortunate, as I said, to be able to kind of do what I want to do in my direction.
Definitely. You mentioned Cody Rhodes. That was kind of a hot topic. And I don't know if you guys seen the match that everybody's talking about, Ricochet and Will Ospreay.
I've seen the highlights and I've seen the clips of it. I don't follow anything mainstream usually. It's usually what people share with me or what I see, when I come online and people will share things. But I did see the highlight clip of that, and I astounded is an understatement for some of the acrobatics that they performed.
Oh, so you don't have a problem with it being not traditional wrestling?
As I said, we're in a different age.
Right.
Perhaps a few years ago, I would have had a problem. And traditionally, I'm a traditionalist, and I like the really old school. I like big men, hitting each other hard, and convincing each other it's a fight. Going back to Jake the Snake Roberts, something he said before, that if people go in believing that this is a fake wrestling show, I hate the word fake. I despise using the word fake, because it's not an appropriate word to apply to what we do at all. But Jake the Snake Roberts said, if people expect to come in and sing a fake wrestling show, but they say that match, they were going at it for real. They were really hitting each other. They were really fighting each other. That's what the draw was for me. Was two people really locked in and engaged in combat, two larger-than-life figures. And I try to replicate that. And with everything that I do, I like to present that. So that's really my preference. But we're in such an age, we've had a generation of hardcore wrestlers who have beat each other with every possible weapon imaginable. You still have remnants of that going into, what CZW was doing for a little while. We're going back to ECW and, what they sort of engendered there. And, you have Lucha Libre, where people, all it is, tumbling and flipping and rolling, and the acrobatics and the athleticism is absolutely incredible. And then you have the Smash Mouth style, as, it's been called, which people have sort of applied to me, where I'm just going in there and I'm beating people up and throwing them around. And there's nothing pretty about it.
Right.
And it looks like it hurts, because most of the time it does. Traditionally, I'm not a fan of what Ricochet and Ospreay did.
Okay.
And that's saying it just as personal preference.
Right.
What they did was astounding and incredible, and take years and years and years of training. And hats off to them. And I'm glad they're getting recognition for what they did. And personally, I wouldn't teach people to wrestle like that, because I just don't. That's not my style. But as I said, we're in a different generation. There's so many different forms in which to express yourself. Mm-hmm. And you can really pick and choose the style, the overlapping of styles that really suits you best, and it's for the entertainment of the people. So as long as people are entertained, and they were safe coming out of the match, and that's a really big one for me. It's another reason I won't teach anything like that. I'll teach you everything to do between the moves. Anybody can learn to do a move, but it's what goes on between the moves that matters. Right. So I'll never teach anybody to jump and flip and twist and turn off the top rope to the outside, because I don't want to feel culpable for that should anything happen. I feel personally responsible for somebody that happened, somebody broke their neck, and I just feel, several years back when we were back in the territory days, I say we, I shouldn't say we as a wrestling community, went back in the territory days, you had to wrestle 4 or 5 nights a week. And so the people were being safe, they were being tight, but they were being very, very safe, because they had to go to another city and work the next night, sometimes 2 nights a week. Right. Now, if you're performing that sort of match, over and over, you're just increasing the probability that something bad can happen. We look at what unfortunately happened with Hayabusa recently when he passed away, because, he was one of the innovators of the high-flying style. And, he himself said, put the moves, if you want to do them, put the moves where they belong. Don't just do the moves to do the moves, because you can, because look what happened to him. He was doing simple moves he performed all the time, and he broke his neck. Yep. And I cringe sometimes when I see the younger guys performing some of the high-flying athletic feats, but not looking down with disdain upon what they're doing, but rather just, I don't want to look just in case something happens. I don't want to, bear witness to a known heart incident where somebody twists the wrong way or falls the wrong way or somebody fails to catch somebody. I just don't want to see it.
Yeah.
Because I'll never be able to erase that image from my head. So I'm not at all against people doing things as long as they're done properly and they're done safely. I worry about, all my brother workers. I just want them to be safe. I don't want anything bad to happen to them.
Of course. Now, have you yourself suffered injuries, I'd imagine?
Several injuries. Most recently, with this past September, something as simple as I was going to give a clothesline to someone over the top rope and he got stuck. And I went to give him a little push to get him over more, and the ropes were tightened. He popped him back and completely tore my right pectoral muscle.
Oh, wow.
Yes. That's just something simple,
Yeah.
I've done 100 times. So you never know. I mean, it's not if an injury is going to happen in professional wrestling, it's sort of when.
Right.
Yeah, that left me out for 12 weeks afterwards. I felt it immediately. I went into shock. I felt it happen. It didn't hurt immediately.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't until several hours later. I couldn't take my shirt off my head afterwards just because of the pain. And from my middle of my chest to sort of my forearm on my right side was black and blue for about 3 weeks. Fortunately, I didn't require the surgery because the tendon didn't tear. It was just a lateral tear across the muscle itself. So I was very, very fortunate there with that. But I've had several concussions. Just the nature of the business and especially the way I work. I like it laid in, I like it hard, just, as I said, convincing. One that was interesting, I remember, this was going back a few years, we were doing drills at the end of the night and I got kicked in the ribs really stiff by somebody and then body slammed on the same rib later on, so it was really hurt, it kind of was aching me for a few days. Mm-hmm. And I went to wrestle that weekend, and I remember I was working somebody I was good friends with, for quite a long time, Andrew Steele from Delaware. Mm-hmm. And I don't even think he knew. And when you get to know somebody and you're friends with, you tend to go a little harder and more physical. He kicked me right in the rib that had been hurting and just broke my rib. Mm. So I had to finish off the match, with the broken rib, and then they wanted me to go do a run-in later. So that was the first time I broke my rib. Yeah, another time I broke my rib, I remember... What's that?
I said, that was only the first time.
That was the first time. The second time I broke my rib, different rib. I remember it was in the summer, as I said, when we were training at the old facility. He didn't have any air conditioning in the summer. Mm-hmm. So I remember it was a day, it was sweltering, it had to be 90-something degrees outside. It was well over 100 inside because it got hotter in there. It was a warehouse, like a tin roof. So it just got even hotter inside. So we just got done a really grueling physical night of training. And at the end of the night, he wanted one of the other students to practice backdrops with me. And we're not talking whip off the rope, standard backdrop. No, he wanted to do not even walk in, just standing backdrops. And now the person he had doing them to me was, 160 pounds. And we're tired, we're exhausted. At the end of the night, we're sweaty and slippery. So he gave me one, and the first one, just standing there, I took and, landed strange on my ribs just because the exhaustion we had experienced and just overheating. It was just a really brutal night. So that felt funny. So he says, just get up and take another one. So I get up, I take another one, and I haven't taken a backdrop since. I landed so hard on my rib. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I slipped or it was just he couldn't support me because I weighed so much more than he did. It was just a combination of elements, the fatigue and everything, and I just haven't taken a backdrop since because how badly that, the pain was for that. I couldn't do anything. Couldn't ride in a car. Breathing hurt. Taking a shower hurt. The little things you take for granted, sort of everything. I wasn't able to do anything without some sort of pain, and that lasted for a couple months, and I was still wrestling on it. Didn't want to take a break.
Of course
I was still wrestling on it. But little other things. I've torn a bicep before wrestling. Injuries happen.
Yeah, of course.
Injuries, yeah.
Now, would you say, like you said, injuries happen. It's kind of unavoidable, but would you say some of it could be like lack of training or poorly trained, stuff like that? Have you seen?
That's the most dangerous. And I can't emphasize enough people going to a proper training facility where they're doing everything correctly. And, I see people just rather spend their money because there's not so much on subpar training, or because it's, it's 10 minutes down the road, so I'll go train here because this guy's got the ring in his garage, or, whatever it is. But yeah, that's what we do is extremely physical, and what we do is extremely dangerous. And there's a reason we're taught the proper things, the way to do things. And even when we're taught the proper way to do things, there's a great chance, that you can get injured in this business. The longer you're in it, and the more matches you do, it's just an increasing probability. And when you play those odds, eventually it's going to happen. Mm-hmm. But when you are not trained or very poorly trained, that just increases not only the risk for yourself, but the person you're wrestling with. If you can't give or take a move properly, it just spells disaster for everyone. There's times I legitimately, there's one time someone didn't know what he was doing, and I legitimately threw him out of the ring and told the referee to count him out.
Nice.
He tried to get back in the ring, and I kicked him in the head. I legitimately kicked him in the head. I said, "Stay out of the ring." Another time I remember it was a battle royal somewhere, and it was just a disaster of a night. They had run an old skating rink. Now, I was driving for what would typically be about 2.5 hours. It was up in McAdoo, Pennsylvania. I was typically a 2-hour or so drive, 2.5 maybe. Mm-hmm. And that night it happened to be in February, it was snowing very, very hard. So there's a lot of people who didn't want to come out to the show. A lot of workers didn't want to come out to the show. So we ended up, a lot of the matches got scrapped, and I was one of the only, few workers up there. And so they, of course, what happens when you don't have enough people to have a whole card? We throw a battle royal, What's always the last go-to salt? We need still 10, 15 minutes. Let's throw a battle royal and have everybody. So I put in the battle royal, and it just turns out they needed more people. So I think the promoter's brother came in.
Oh, man.
And he has a Hot Topic boots or something with buckles all up the side. And next thing I know, he has no idea what he's doing. Doesn't have any real gear. And next thing I know, he's trying to jump kick me in the face in the corner. So I, again, legitimately I moved out of the way because he's got all these buckles on the side of his boots, and it's not safe. It's just not a safe position to be in. So I took him and I just threw him out of the ring. I dumped him on his head on the concrete.
Oh, man.
Well, this is own fault. He didn't know how to go to the top rope. But it's just a matter for everyone's safety. Get out of the ring. I don't want you in the ring.
Right. Yeah. Okay. You mentioned before too weightlifting, and you said you started that kind of early on. Is that something that inspired by being a wrestler, or like being a wrestler inspired to get bigger?
It was a little bit of both. I was always sort of compelled towards big, strong men. I always sort of idolized these, sort of characters, and I knew from a very early age that if I wanted to be that way, I'd have to start lifting weights, because that's what big people did. They lifted weights. So I remember being 13 years old the first time I got some sort of, weight equipment. And I was addicted from the time I was 13. I had no idea what I was doing. I just sort of lifted any kind of lifts, I thought might be suitable. And they were terrible form. And, for a couple of years I was really stuck in this sort of rut of I want to lift things. And I was lifting things very actively. I just didn't have the proper training. When I was about 17, I hooked up with someone who I started going to one of the local gyms around the area, and I hooked up with someone who was a personal trainer, and he was crazy. I don't often tell this story, but I remember going. It was a Man's World's gym in Trenton, New Jersey, and that gym is a haven. It was still known to this day as a bodybuilding gym, and at the time was one of the premier bodybuilding gyms in the area. They had national level competitors, world class competitors in powerlifting and bodybuilding both, who were going to that place. And I remember going in a very hot summer, and there was a man, and he was training people, and he had a big white beard, and he had gauges through his ears, and he had a tattooed head, and he was screaming at the top of these lungs at these people, until they're screaming in agony. And I said, this is the person I want to train me. So he was a big man, dude. Yeah. He was former Mr. New Jersey, former Mr. East Coast, and I believe he competed for a while on national level. His name was Carl Zuccarello. And he had traps up to his ears. He was only about 5'6", but he weighed about 230 pounds, and he was just ridiculously solid. Mm-hmm. He was just a massive man of an individual, and he was one of the scariest people if you didn't know him. And even if you did know him, he was still a little off. Right. But he was the first one to really teach me how to use the weights properly. So I trained under him for a little while, and the person who owned the gym at the time, who was almost like a father to me, a man named Joe Dodd, who was he was a national level competitor at one time, competed in Mr. Universe. won all sorts of bodybuilding titles, so innumerable. I know Mr. America was among them, Mr. East Coast, Mr. New Jersey, Mr. North America, I believe. It was just, title after title that he'd won. He'd been on the cover of Muscle and Fitness and all sorts of these other magazines back in his day. And he was a golden age bodybuilder. So he was, right before Arnold was even competing. He actually competed against Arnold, I believe, in one of the Universe competitions.
Oh, wow.
He defeated Lou Ferrigno, Lou Ferrigno's early career.
Yeah.
So how many people you know that have said, they've beaten the Incredible Hulk? So I was very, very privileged to, have him mentor me and really guide me for several years in the right direction and lead me, to develop my physique and, learn everything proper about the bodybuilding world. And, just an idol of a man to me. One of the kindest, most gentle men you would ever meet in this world, and I still to this day idolize everything he sort of embodied and embraced.
Right.
And I attribute much of what I know about physical fitness today, almost all of it, to the teachings of Joe Todd.
Okay, so kind of explain your daily workouts from like when you started out, kind of just weightlifting and like to now.
When I started, I don't even want to get into how terrible it was. It was, here's these weights, and I think this works my arms, so I'm going to move it this way. And I think this works my chest, so I'm going to kind of move it this way. But I was trying hard, and I still, even being a child, I was pushing myself. Even though I didn't have a clue what I was doing, I was trying, So it was just a mismatch of, I think this sort of works like that. I saw somebody else do this, so I'm going to lift the weight this way. And it was horrendous. And I'm probably lucky I didn't get hurt doing some of the things I did. But now what it looks like is I'm very regimented with what I do. Usually I'll spend between an hour and 45 minutes and 2.5 hours, depending on the muscle group and what we're doing on a given day in the gym. I'll usually work a body part once a week, 1 to 2 body parts a day. For example, it's a typical bodybuilding routine. Maybe I do chest and shoulders on the first day. Then the next day I'll do like my back, my traps, and my rear delts on the next day, and then maybe arms, abs, and calves the next day. And then day 4 I'll do hamstrings and quadriceps. And then I'll throw conditioning work. I try to add a little conditioning work between too. So maybe one day also I'll throw in 25 minutes of cardio on a stepper, or in addition to I'll do sort of just conditioning drills that we'll do in the ring, and I'll keep on that, jumping the rope, or doing different footwork drills, or stand on a box jumps, or just other things just for conditioning purposes to keep my wind up and to keep myself a little more mobile and agile in the ring. And fairly recently, for training over at the Auto Arch Dojo, Cheeseburger is one of the people coaching over there, and he does yoga, so he's introduced me to quite a bit of yoga exercises. So usually I'll throw yoga in a couple times a week also.
Oh, okay.
I'm by no means a yoga practitioner, but since I really know what I'm doing, I know a few basic yoga stretches that I've been taught, and so I just apply them as I know them. I'm very novice to the world of yoga,
right.
But it feels a lot better. It makes your body feel good, and you feel much more limber after you've done a yoga session.
So are you talking 5 days a week, 7 days a week in the gym?
Usually, in the gym itself, I'll do 4 days a week.
Okay.
Depending on the week, I'll usually do between 1 to 2 days in the ring training. And then I usually have an event on the weekends.
Okay.
So usually I get 1 day where I completely rest my body. Usually Sundays after an event, I'll just rest completely. So that's about the only day I get where I really rest, recover.
Yeah. Makes sense. Okay, and another big part of like weightlifting and bodybuilding is the diet, right?
Of course, I like to emphasize to people, because a lot of people have misconceptions about the fitness world. They believe that the harder you go in the gym, you're just going to see results. They think if you do the ab crunches, your abs are just going to come out, or you do the bench press, you're just going to start having a big chest, which is it's untrue without having the foundation of diet behind it. And I'd say 80% of what happens is what you do outside of the gym with proper rest, proper nutrition. And you can usually tell who's, just physically looking at somebody. It's sort of a fun game if you want to try going to a wrestling event and say, guessing which one's opening a cooler worth of food with them, because usually the ones who have outstanding physiques are usually bringing their own food, which is usually prepackaged and measured, and they know what to eat and when to eat it. And so it's a very, very important part of any sort of gains you want to make in the gym. You're not going to grow without your protein, and if you're eating bad food, no matter how many crunches you do or how much cardio you do, you're not going to have a six-pack.
Right. Now, is that something for you, like personally, that's hard to maintain being on the road, or like earlier on maybe being on the road so much? It was hard to maintain.
Not really, sir, because I'd done bodybuilding regimens more before I had started wrestling, a few years before I'd started wrestling. So I've sort of become accustomed to being able to pack my own food and having to do that and bring things with me. So usually I'll have a preparation day where I'll prepare all the food before. So this way, when it's time to go on the road, I just throw it in the cooler and off we go. And then I have everything prepackaged and pre-measured, and I eat when I have to eat.
Okay, so yeah, you got it down to a science almost.
Yes, for the most part. I mean, now you used to weigh food, I can sort of visually just pick out, okay, I need 8 to 10 ounces of chicken breast. I know pretty much what 8 to 10 ounces of chicken breast looks like, so I know approximately how much I have to eat without having to bring out the scale and measure.
Right.
Things like that.
Okay. Another thing I wanted to talk about, I saw your war paint.
Yes.
And sometimes you go like full body, even where I saw a picture you had it when you were reffing, you had it on even.
When I wrestled, I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last part of that.
You had the war paint on when you were a referee also?
Yes, when I refereed, I did also. You know, again, going back to the ancestors and all the great warriors, you know, go to any tribe in history, everyone wore war paint, you know, it's just, it's sort of the essence of becoming that warrior and becoming one with the essence of battle, you know. Some cultures would invoke the gods of war as they're putting on their paint. I know the Native Americans had their own traditions and all the war paint sort of meant something, and so it's just a throwback to all the warrior traditions throughout the ages, you know. The Marines in Vietnam, you know, they slather their faces with the green and the black to, you know, blend in with the surroundings. So all throughout the ages, you had a history of war paint, and not only that, it's a testament to all the great wrestlers who wore war paint before me also, you know, the Road Warriors, Ultimate Warrior, Sting, you know, all the greats, you know, that you can name that wore that face paint, which is the same thing as going back and embodying the spirit of the warrior, which whether they did that deliberately or not, that's essentially what they did. Mm-hmm. And it also allows me a little more creative liberty with, you know, what I want to do on a given day. When I work heel, I tend to wear the full red just because it's a lot more menacing. If I want to strike fear into the hearts of people, I'll go out looking like a demon. Because sometimes psychologically, you win the battle beforehand if somebody's already thought they've lost.
Right. Yeah.
So
I seen too. You had a contest for your fans doing the war paint.
Yes.
Is that
recently?
Yeah, is that something you're gonna do again in the future, maybe?
It's possible I might do that again. Usually I try to come up with different things, you know, to keep it exciting. I think one I did, you know, we had buttons that you could win, you know, whoever, I think I had a certain amount of shares, and if, you know, for every 50 shares, I would give out another set of buttons where I'd select randomly. So I like to do things because, I feel it's very important to give back to the people who are giving to you. Mm-hmm. And I feel like without the fans, and I really value each and every one of the people who are fans of mine, because they're investing themselves in some sort of way, whether it's emotionally or monetarily or, you know, vicarious. Some people like live vicariously for what you do. So in some sort of way, they're investing themselves in you. And without that, you aren't who you are. And you always want to give back to them. You know, it's people think it's a one-way relationship. It's really not, because I always want to give back to the fans and, you know, show how much that I appreciate them and how much they mean to me and how much I value, you know, each and every one of them, for just giving a portion of their lives to me. Right. Because that's all you really have. That's all you really have is you have your life, and you can give portions of that time to whom and what you feel you should. And, you know, I just feel very humbled, and I feel very privileged that people would give me, you know, a time of their life is what they're giving me.
Right, definitely.
And so I want to give back and then let them know that they're appreciated, you know. But if you go to the war paint, I believe some of the war paint's still up. If you scroll down my fan page a little bit, the person who won, she's a beast when it comes to the paint. I saw her do different face paint designs there, so what she likes to do. But wow, I was impressed. I saw these pictures, and she just had the black and the red, and, you know, I think some white in there, and then she had a knife, and she had it all over her chest and shoulders, and then she's sticking her tongue out. I'm like, she's probably more fierce than I am in these pictures. Her name is Joan, and she's someone who, you know, interacts with me quite frequently. I was very happy to do this war paint contest. I was, I think, more excited to see her do it, just because I know the passion she has for dressing herself up and painting herself up, and I'm very proud of her and what she's done, and, you know, it's a great person, and great to have a supporter such as that. So I think think whoever had the most likes on a specific war paint design, won a free T-shirt, and we shipped it out to them. So.
Very, very cool. That's very cool. If you do it again in the future, I'm definitely going to try to get in on that.
Absolutely, the more the merrier, as they say, and I'd be happy to.
Okay. I want to talk a little bit about some of the different promotions that you've worked for. I have DCW.
Yes, that's has been a few years, but that's originally when I broke into the independent scene out of the original from when I was trained the promotion that I had worked for. That was the first promotion that brought me in outside of my home fed, which was based out of the Monster Factory.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I worked with them for several years. I worked with them.
Okay. And you mentioned earlier we talked NWA.
Yes, fairly recently actually. It was. I'm so terrible with dates. It was in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. I can't remember the exact date off the top of my head. I'm just very, very bad with dates. But I had the privilege of working Ox Hog in the main event of NWA Northeast, and that was a battle. It was a no count out, no disqualification, and we beat the bloody tar out of each other, and it was fantastic. So yes, I'm very fortunate to be working for NWA Northeast.
Nice. Okay. And you mentioned the ROH dojo you're at. You did some work with ROH. Not recent. Was it recently or?
It was about a year ago.
Okay.
It was a shame because shortly after our episode aired that we were on for national TV, we had both hurt ourselves, both myself and my tag team partner, the Red Scorpion. Red Scorpion completely blew his knee on, had to have reconstructive surgery. He tore his patella tendon completely while attempting to move to the outside. So and this was right off of, us coming off of TV.
Yeah.
So this was last July. We were on Ring of Honor television in Baltimore.
That was
with
against
the Briscoe brothers.
Yeah.
And so unfortunately, and then the next month after he blew his knee out, I hurt my pec, so I was out for 3 months too. So it's just very bad timing on that. But as things happen, it's wrestling. You just move forward as best you can. You don't dwell on the past, and you don't try to let negativity affect you.
Right. So but just as you guys are getting going though, and it's like, it kind of got cut short because of the injuries.
Yeah.
But
no, it's a fantastic company to work for, and I can honestly say between Monster Factory, Ring of Honor, and some of the other promotions I work for here and there, that I'm just surrounded by not only some of the top wrestlers in the country, but some of the top wrestlers in the world, and I'm just very fortunate to be around that town base and to be learning from these people, because you never stop learning. No matter how much you think you know, you can never learn too much, and you never stop. And it's just great because every time I'm around anybody from this, that sort of area, I'm always learning something, and I'm always expanding, I'm always growing, and it's just a great group of people to be around. You become friends with all these people, and it's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, definitely. Have you worked in any different countries?
I've not yet worked in any different countries. I've had some offers, and things just didn't sort of pan out logistically. There was one point I was supposed to go over to Japan, and everything, all the dates fell through. And then fairly recently I had somebody from Germany contact me. They wanted to bring me in over there. Suggestions from other people that, to go down to Puerto Rico. And sort of every time something sort of starts lining up, it just doesn't come through. Mm-hmm. So hopefully in the near future. I'm hoping in the near future.
I was going to say, is that a goal of yours?
I'd love to. I'd love to go to Japan. I'd love to go to Puerto Rico. I'd love to go overseas, anywhere. Just to learn the cultures and get the experience and work the different styles and just to have that experience in your life. Mm-hmm. Try the different foods and it's just something great to be able to experience. So I'd absolutely love to. As many different places I can go, the better.
Definitely. You mentioned Red Scorpion, your tag team partner before. That's Bloodbound Warriors?
Yes, we are the Bloodbound Warriors.
Okay.
That is my partner with me.
And how long you guys been together?
That's an interesting story. The whole story is quite, I don't want to get too in-depth in it because I could probably go on for quite a while with that story.
Okay.
Officially, we've been tag teaming for a little over 3 years, I believe. We started as bitter enemies, feuding with each other, and, eventually somebody said, hey, these two guys look like they belong together. So somebody paired us up, and then somebody in a different promotion said, hey, I see this guy that looks sort of like you, we should pair you up. And so they independently had that idea. And, the funny part being that that happened in Monster Factory when they brought Red Scorpion in Monster Factory. They wanted a tag team partner for me, so Danny Cage had a great idea to bring Red Scorpion in and tag him with me because we have a similar look and the same size, sort of. But that had already happened out in SWO in Columbia, Pennsylvania. We had already tagged out there with unbeknownst to Danny. And then it's funny because we had each independently done a Ring of Honor seminar on different occasions. And I just had to put that over real quick. If anyone who's listening is a professional wrestler and has the opportunity to do any of the Ring of Honor 3-day camps, I highly, highly recommend it because it's a wealth and a world of knowledge that you'll never, forget. And it's an experience you want to go through. So I suggest getting out to one of the Ring of Honor camps. But going back to what I was saying is, so Kevin Kelly contacts Danny Cage and says, hey, I have this really good idea. I'm going to put Red Scorpion and Greywolf together. So Danny laughs and just says, I've been doing that already. So it's sort of funny because we had so many people suggest that we be together just because of, our look and our personas and everything.
Yeah, it definitely is like the perfect complement to each other.
Yes, and I've said it before, that, I've been in tag teams here and there, and nothing really seemed to click. It was always, okay, I've got a partner. Not discrediting any of the work my partners have done. I'm great friends with some of the people I've been partners with, but never really had that complementary dynamic. It was always, Greywolf was with somebody here that's kind of like him a little bit, or somebody completely off the wall. There's one point I teamed with, I don't know if you're familiar with Crazy Shay, who was my partner for a while down in Delaware, and he's just, he's really lean. He's about 170 pounds. He's really, really lean. He likes to do crazy flying flips, and, he's very, very over-the-top, sort of like me. So we had these two just over-the-top people in the ring screaming and making noise and carrying on in their own different way, which was great, and it was fantastic, and the fans loved it. But we didn't click, It was fun. It was, good for what it was, but we just didn't have that ability to sort of do things in unison.
Right.
And really click with each other. It's like the Road Warriors, there's only one Hawk and there's only one Animal, and I feel like those two are always together, and even though they tried to have draws and hide and rake later on, it sort of didn't work.
Yeah.
Even though they were very similar, but so we really just clicked, and it was a beautiful thing when it did come together.
Right. So, would you kind of compare yourselves to the Road Warriors a little bit?
I often get a lot of comparisons to the Road Warriors.
Would you be Hawk or Animal?
I'd be Hawk or Animal. Well, Hawk would do the diving, crazier things, right? He's the one. Animal would lift them up, then Hawk would dive off and hit them with the clothesline. So I'd say it'd probably be Animal because I like to stay on the ground. And nice. Scorpion likes to fly all over the place.
Okay.
But I honestly, the comparison's always very humbling because that's how people see us sort of portrayed.
Right.
And that's the association they make in their minds. And, to even be compared with somebody on that level, it's just very humbling that somebody would even suggest that. I would never suggest that, we're the Road Warriors. No, I would never suggest that, that at all. But if that's what people see, and a lot of people have said that, have made that comparison, then, so be it in their minds. I'm not going to, negate what they've said.
Yeah.
But I'm also not going to go out and claim that, yes, we're the Road Warriors. I think I'd sound ridiculous saying that.
Right. Now, where does the name Bloodbound Warriors come from?
Sort of we were tossing names out, to do what we want to do, and we both sort of embody the warrior spirit thing. So that was sort of the Warriors. It was going to be something Warriors, and we just thinking, how about warriors that are just bound by the blood of war? And which is cool because we ended up using a song by Hammerfall called "Heeding the Call," and they also, on the same discography, have a song called Bloodbound, which we're looking at, it just all clicked.
Right.
We're warriors bound by the blood of war, and we're talking about the blood something warriors, and but it all sort of just came together, and then just fell that way.
Cool.
After a bit of brainstorming.
Okay, now you mentioned you tagged with a couple different people before, and you've done a bunch of singles work. You have a preference, singles or tag?
As much as I do enjoy tag, you get a bit of a break in the ring. You don't have to abuse your body as much because the other partner is doing half the work for you. I do prefer singles. Just the storytelling within a singles match itself. I just sort of enjoy the storytelling a little more. I love doing tag. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying I really prefer this over one over the other. I'd love to be in the ring and I'd love to be wrestling. And I sort of have a tendency to prefer singles because I can tell the story the whole time. as I'm going. And I think the storytelling's I prefer the storytelling a little better, I think, when I'm working singles.
Now, that's almost a lost art nowadays.
No, I really think it depends where you go. Some people that you really just have to look in the right places. And I really think and I've said this quite a bit fairly recently, we're really in another boom period for wrestling.
Yeah, definitely.
Where there's just so much good. Everywhere you look, there's so many good people just coming out of the woodwork from so many different areas. And some of the people I see are just so unbelievable and influenced by so many different people. So I really think we're in such a great time for professional wrestling. But with everything, the cream always rises. And, you see, it's always the story that's going to connect. And we go back to, the Ospreay match. I didn't see the entire match, the Ricochet Ospreay. I didn't see this. I didn't know the story was. I saw the cool moves that they did. But if you do all those cool moves and you don't have a story behind it, it doesn't matter.
Right.
If it's not connecting with the crowd, nobody's going to care to watch. And, I also make the comparison, I do this with my students, that you could watch a Kung Fu movie, and they're doing all these cool moves and flipping and flying around, and smashing each other with this and that weapon, and, it's crazy and it's fantastic, and, the athleticism is incredible, and the skill takes years and years to acquire to do that. But then you ask them an hour later, can you name a move they did?
Yeah.
Now, can you name the story? They don't care.
Yeah.
It's sort of, it was cool to watch at the time, and I call it the firework factor. You watch fireworks, one goes up, explodes, and there, ooh, the grand finale, ooh, and then, but you've not invested in anything but that ooh.
Right.
You're not invested in a fireworks display. You're not emotionally invested with a fireworks display. Now, let's go to the contrary. Now, let's look at something, let's say, like a Clint Eastwood movie, or, John Wayne, or somebody like that, You've got the hero who's been beaten and his whole life taken away by the villain, but finally they meet, at the corral, and it's high noon and the sun is in the sky. And there just comes that moment, that whole 2-minute moment where they're looking at each other and they're walking slow up to each other. And then one's hand goes down and they've got the person in the middle waiting to say draw, and you see their fingers twitching, you see the sweat pouring off their face, and their eyes moving back and forth, and all you're waiting on is for that draw.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you ask somebody later, a week later, what happened in that movie, they're going to tell you how the build-up was to that draw, because they were emotionally invested. They wanted to see what was going to happen,
Right.
And whereas in martial arts, you have flips and flops, and they do this kick, that punch, all over the place. That one bang from one of their guns is going to mean that much more.
Yeah.
Than all of the kicks combined.
Yeah.
Because there was a story behind it and people were emotionally invested in it, and that's what they're going to remember.
Yeah, I want
so I try to make that comparison.
Yeah, I want to kind of correct myself, because I said storytelling is kind of a lost art, but it's not much storytelling as like selling like the moves to make the story. Do you know what I mean?
I agree. In a certain capacity, it depends, and I feel like it's also a stylistic thing depending on your region, depending on where you're going, what you're watching. Obviously, a WWE event is going to be much different than a Ring of Honor super event. You're going to see a lot of different moves and a lot of different styles. I'm very, very big on the sell, and I always teach my people that I'm trying to coach. Always sell, let them take their time, let everything register. Because your sell is where you're going to get your sympathy as a babyface. Without that, nobody cares, about Superman when he has bullets bouncing off of his chest. They care about Superman when somebody's got the kryptonite and he's on his knees. How's he going to get out of it? That's what they care. I mean, Rocky Balboa's one of the greatest stories ever told.
Mm-hmm.
How many bad things happen to Rocky? The entire movie, if you think about it, metaphorically, was Rocky Balboa selling.
Yep.
He had the girlfriend he was having trouble with,
His son.
Mickey dies in the one, and, the other one, Apollo Creed, he dies, and something's bad and tragic, then the one, his wife's in the hospital, and something bad and tragic is happening throughout his whole life, and then throughout the fight itself, he's just getting mauled and pummeled by these gargantuans that are just beating the life out of him, and that's why you start to care.
Right.
Because it's, how's this guy going to overcome this? And you start to empathize with that, and you vicariously, you become that character. And that's essentially what we create in the wrestling world. And that's why I tell people to sell, and getting that sympathy is so important. Because then, again, they're invested in you, and they want to see what's going to happen. And they're going to care about your story.
Absolutely. Okay, couple other things I have left here. We're kind of winding down. We're at the 54-minute mark. Meeting Bill Apter?
Yes. Yes, fantastic individual. I've met him on a couple occasions now. One of the most humble men for all he's accomplished in the world, and one of the nicest people. I cannot say enough good things about Bill Apter. We went to film something for him over at the Chickies and Pete's in Philadelphia with some of the Monster Factory crew, and afterwards he just gave us a small performance of his one-man show that he does, where he sings and he tells stories, and it's just, he does impersonations, and it's just an absolutely fantastic person. I cannot say enough good things about Bill Apter, though what I can say is I want everyone listening to go out and at least look up, if not buy, his book called Is Wrestling Fixed? I Didn't Know It Was Broken. So I'm going to plug Bill Apter's book for you. I can't say enough good things about Bill. Bill, if you're listening, hello, I love you, and thank you for everything you've done for the business.
Awesome. Okay. Another thing I saw. Were you a Rosebud?
Yes, I was. I think they didn't call me back afterwards because I was the biggest Rosebud they ever had.
Well, bigger than Braun Strowman?
What's that?
Bigger than Braun Strowman?
I'm not sure if I know him.
From the Wyatt family.
Oh, no. Was he a Rosebud?
He was for like a minute, yeah.
I didn't know that. Well, I like to make, it's obviously not the case. I like to make jokes about it.
No, but I just had
it was fun.
Yeah, I had Cody Hawk on a couple episodes back, and he was talking about the whole behind the scenes thing of how that works, and the big bucket of costumes and stuff like that, so.
I've got a great story for that. But when I was doing the Rosebuds, I'd been contacted by WWE to do some extra work for them, and I'd heard what it was going to be in regards to. So I'm like, oh, well, you need these costumes, these crazy costumes. Mm-hmm. And I don't watch the mainstream, so I'm not too familiar with the product. All I know is I knew they had these crazy costumes you had to wear. So I'm thinking, you might want to bring your own. Why not just bring your own? So I have a good friend, Sir Styles, who works down in Delaware with me. Bro, if you're listening, also love you. Big shout out to you. But he lives fairly close to me, and he just has this fantastic wardrobe of every crazy, colorful hat and jacket and tie and shirt and pants and everything you could possibly imagine. Sequins, and he has these whole collection of fur coats in different colors. So I went to him and I asked him, can I borrow some of your things, so I can go to this Rosebud. So luckily I brought this collection of clothing because when I had arrived, it turns out from when they were traveling from city to city, the whole bucket of Rosebud clothing got lost in transit.
Ah.
So fortunately, I had this whole reserve of, crazy looking clothes that,
right.
Myself and one of the other people ended up wearing out because we needed the costumes. And fortunately, I came prepared with it. But the green jacket that Adam Rose came out with for a while was actually one of the jackets that I brought.
Oh, wow.
From my friend that he ended up getting in touch with and buying off my friend. And now is an unlock item in a video game, I've been told. So I just think that's a cool story.
Oh, wow,
tell.
Yeah.
So yes, the first 2 days were house shows that we did.
Cool.
And he just loved it. We came, myself and another person came out in these crazy jackets, and I had a little top hat on, and it was a wild shirt. And so Monday Night Raw was the Monday. So Adam Rose loved the jacket so much he insisted on wearing the green jacket I had. So that's how he came to acquire the green jacket that he would wear to the ring.
There it is. Nice. Okay. Do you want to shout out any or plug any of the current promotions you're working for?
Yes, why don't I'll do that. I actually have quite a bit coming up. If you actually want to plug my pages, because if you come to my pages, I always post where I'm going to be, where you can follow me. So if you go to facebook.com/t.l.w.greywolf for The Last Warrior Greywolf, I post all my dates up there. Also, my personal pages, facebook.com/xGreywolfX, or Twitter at @TLW_Greywolf. You can get a hold of me on Twitter, and I try to post all my dates on what I'll be coming. June 11th, I'm at Monster Factory, Paulsboro, New Jersey. June 18th, Keystone Pro Wrestling in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. June 25th, Off the Chain Wrestling in Berkeley Springs, West Virginia. July 9th, I'm back with NWA Northeast in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. The WrestleSphere in Elmira, New York on July 24th, and on July 30th, ACWA in McAdoo, Pennsylvania. And I'll have all posters and dates and, locations for anyone who would like to come see any of these events. And I'll be posting them. It is quite a bit. I'm keeping quite busy, so
Cool. Okay. The last two things here. Dream opponent.
Dream opponent. Oh, that's
Alive or dead? Anybody?
you know, there's so many. And I always resort to probably Kurt Hennig in his prime
Oh, wow.
as a heel.
Nice. That's a good one. Yeah. Okay, and you also did some movie work. Film called Reckless.
Yeah, it's filmed. It's currently filming. We're filming the trailer right now in order to get it kickstarted, get some more funds to increase the budget for the movie. It's for a company called Fertile Ground Films, and it's a really cool story. I play a character named Addis, sort of a bit of a bully, just does terrible things to people, and there's a whole really cool story behind it, which it's not enough time to really get into right now, but it's going to be worth checking out. We're currently going to be we're setting up another date to film more for it. This weekend I actually have a red carpet premiere for the trailer for a movie called Live Squad that I worked on, where I played sort of a hooligan in a bar. I think it's funny. I get compared by my wife to the modern Danny Trejo, because I sort of always get cast in these sort of roles,
Right.
that sort of bad guy kind of role.
Right. Okay.
Yes, I have those coming up. Just a few projects I'm working on.
Very cool. Very cool. Okay, well, that's all I have. So I want to thank you for taking time out and coming on. And I know we tried to get this done a little earlier. I tried to get you about a couple weeks ago, but we finally got it done. So
it's excellent. It's a real privilege that you had me on, and I feel very honored for doing your show. And also have to just give a shout out to Regina. Regina, if you're listening, I love you.
there it is. Okay. Thanks again. All right, that was my conversation with Last Warrior Greywolf. That was a great one. That guy is awesome. You guys have to look him up. Check out all his links. Check out all his upcoming dates. A lot of East Coast stuff, so you guys could hit him up on there. Thank you once again for being on, taking time out. And I'll get out here on my plugs. Facebook group page, Electric City Wrestling Fans. iTunes, Electric City Wrestling Fans Podcast. Make sure you check it out. Subscribe, rate, review, all that good stuff. And I will catch you guys on the next one. Thanks.